in Duskmourn, we get a 5-color Rooms Legend, a green creature that just might be the most broken card in the whole set, a Commander precon card that could show up in Legacy, and so much more. Let's break them down. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Duskmourn spoilers. So we're almost at the end of spoiler season. Tomorrow, the last official day of spoilers. Full set should be tomorrow or Friday, but today we still have a bunch of sweet stuff to talk about, including a card that, my god, I think might actually just be straight up busted and even a mistake, which means we should probably get right into it, start talking spicy new Duskmourn cards. Before we do, some quick reminders. First, if you need any of these cards, you can pre-order them from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. Second, to keep up on all the latest previews throughout the day, you should head on over to MTGpreviews.com. And third, we're getting more Commander precon spoilers. Yesterday, we got the latest precon deck. There's 2 more tomorrow. Tomer's making videos for those over on the Commander YouTube, so make sure to check those out as well. Anyway, let's talk some Duskmourn. First up today, we have a card that I think just might be the most busted card, or at least one of the most busted cards from the entire set in Kona Rescue Bestie. This card is ridiculous. It's a 4-mana 4/3 legendary beast survivor. It is survival at the beginning of your second main phase. If it's tapped, you can put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. A permanent card, not even just a creature. This card is ridiculous. So I've seen some people be like, it's just another Elvish Piper, or it's a Thran Temporal Gateway. But I'm here to tell you, this card is actually way closer to show and tell. You gotta build around it a little bit, but it is a ridiculously huge upgrade compared to Elvish Piper. The problem with Elvish Piper is you need to play it for 4 mana, and then you need to wait a turn for it to lose Summoning Sickness, and then you can use it to put a creature into play. What makes Kona so scary is if you build around it and have a way to tap this without getting into combat, it essentially has haste. You can play this during your first main phase, tap it with something, go to your second main phase, immediately drop any permanent from your hand into play. And this is not just creatures, this is any permanent. Like, we're in a standard with Atraxa, we're in a standard with Portal to Phyrexia, we will soon be in a standard with Omniscience forever. Kona can just drop any of these into play super early in the game. I feel like this card is so incredibly broken. So how do we actually do the haste trick and get this tapped without attacking? And there's actually like a million different ways. Vehicles can do it with crew, any saddle creature can do it. Stuff like Warden of the Inner Sky, New Tyvar can tap an untapped creature to get indestructible. Stuff like Centennial Stalwarts or Relic of Legends can let you tap it for mana. So it seems incredibly realistic to build a deck around this card where you just drop this on turn 4 and immediately put that Omniscience or Atraxa into play. And with a good draw, you can even ramp into it and do it on turn 3. Like, for example, imagine standard in a couple of months once we have Foundation. Turn 1, you play Llanowar Elves. Turn 2, you play Ornery Tumblewag. Turn 3, you play Kona. You use Ornery Tumblewag to tap Kona, go to your second main phase, drop Omniscience into play, and then you just probably win the game since all of your stuff is free. And the only way your opponent can really stop this is by having instant speed interaction up on the turn that you play Kona, because there's no Summoning Sickness, right? The ability is going to trigger right away. You don't got to wait and attack with it or something to put the thing into play. So I think this card is going to be a legit scary build around that could lead to some really devastating decks. It also works with Convoke, Wandering Rescuer, and older format stuff like Court of Calling, another way that you can get it tapped. And once you get back to formats like Modern, or even Pioneer, there's so many options. Springleaf Drum, there's more playable vehicles like Azeka's Chariot, Smuggler's Copter, plus you get even more devastating finishers like Emrakul the Eon's Torn. So I think that Kona is a card that super scary in Standard. I think it has potential at least all the way back to Modern, and it's kind of a ridiculous card in Commander as well. In Commander, it seems so easy to build this as your commander, and since you know you're gonna have access to it all the time, you can just overload on really huge things, Crater Hoofs and Ulamogs, and then have things like Springleaf Drum that let you tap this, and it seems like a really powerful commander that actually might be kind of unfun, because the only thing this card wants to do is like drop an Eldrazi on turn 3, drop a Crater Hoof on turn 3, and that's what you're gonna build your deck to do every single time. So we almost think this card is arguably like too good. Yes, it does die to removal, but if you're built around it and you can tap it right away and get the thing into play the turn that you play Kona, it becomes much harder to deal with. So I think this card is mostly a build around commander, but I would also play it in the 99 of like haste commanders that like big things like Xenagos in specific comes to mind, because in commander you do have 3 opponents, so the plan of actually just attacking with this, like hitting the person that doesn't have a blocker to get it tapped, becomes much more realistic, especially if you can haste it in with something like Xenagos. Also just green decks that like to drop big things, Galtas or Omnath, these ramp decks, I think in those decks you can just kind of play this fairly. So Kona, I feel like this card is just straight up busted. Like, I would be surprised if there wasn't a standard deck that was built around using this to drop Omniscience and other huge things into play. I think it might be good enough for formats like Pioneer and Modern. In Commander, I think it's actually going to be like an almost unfun Commander because of how easy it seems to just drop an Eldrazi into play on turn 3 with this card. So this card is kind of wild. Easily the strongest survival creature that we've seen, and I think one of the strongest cards in the entire set so far. Speaking of cool green cards, we also got our green enduring creature, an Enduring Vitality. So 3 mana 3/3 Elk Glimmer. It has Vigilance, and it says creatures you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. When it dies, it returns as an enchantment. Obviously, its ability applies to all creatures, so it kind of is a 3 mana Vigilant Mana Dork, but it also turns all your other creatures into Mana Dorks. So this is kind of a like, sick annual hero fans, but very upgraded. It's really like a Cryptolith Rites on a body that'll eventually turn into a real Cryptolith Rites. So how good is this card? What do we do with this card? The thing I'm most excited, and I've mentioned this a couple times during spoiler season, but one deck I've really wanted to build in Standard is Valley Floodcaller combo, kind of like a Jeskai Ascendancy combo in Pioneer and Modern, but in Standard, because Valley Floodcaller, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to untap all your birds and frogs and otters and rats. So the easiest way to combo off with this is have birds, frogs, otters, or rats that make mana. So you can tap them all for mana, then you cast a spell, untap them all for mana, cast a spell, untap them all. Try to go infinite that way, and you're pumping the team along the way. The problem with this deck is there's just not enough birds, frogs, otters, and rats in Standard that make mana. If we have Enduring Vitality, then all of our birds, frogs, otters, and rats are making mana, including the Valley Floodcaller itself. So now we can combo off with Dreamdew Entrancers and the token from Storm Chaser's talent, which is especially good with this card because something like Storm Chaser's talent is a non-creature spell, so it's going to trigger the Floodcaller to untap all of our stuff. That also adds an otter to the battlefield that with Enduring Vitality can tap to make mana. So I'm actually very interested to see if we can build a competitive version of Valley Floodcaller combo in Standard with Enduring Vitality. Worst case, it's going to be a cool like against the odds deck. Best case, maybe we have a new combo deck in Standard. It's also super cute, I think, with the survival mechanic. It's another way that you can tap your survivors without getting them into combat. So Kona again, Reluctant Role Model, Cynical Loner, any of those cards going to work really good with Enduring Vitality. In older formats, there are some janky combos with this card. Probably the easiest is Intruder Alarm combos. I know, we broke Intruder Alarm, but anything that taps to make a token, or when it becomes tapped makes a token, with Intruder Alarm and Vitality just goes infinite, so you can like have Stony Brook Schoolmaster, a 3-drop 1/2 Merfolk Wizard, that when it becomes tapped you make a 1/1 blue wizard creature token. So your Stony Brook Schoolmaster can tap to make a mana because of Vitality, so you tap it to make a mana, that's going to trigger the Intruder Alarm with the token it makes to untap the Stony Brook Schoolmaster, then you do it again and make another token, essentially get infinite mana and also infinite tokens. Can do the same thing with Amara Soul the Accordion, a couple of other cards. These decks, probably not going to be like super competitive, but it does seem fun, like all the pieces exist to try to build Enduring Vitality, Amara, Intruder Alarm combo in like Timeless on Magic Arena or something. In Commander, I think this is a card that's for a few specific decks. So the most obvious is really good with commanders that want to be tapped and want to be tapped without getting into combat. So like Wily Duke, Amara, anything like that. This is just a way that you can tap your commander repeatedly. Seems cute in Raga Draga that wants creatures with mana abilities, and then also could be good with commanders that can make tokens. Stuff like Urtet or Silver Queen. They make tokens. Those tokens then make mana, which then lets you cast more spells or pay more mana to make more tokens, so it kind of just snowballs along the way. So Enduring Vitality, card's pretty sweet. I actually think the Enduring cycle is one of the strongest cycles from the set. I don't think this is one of the strongest necessarily of the Enduring cycles, but it certainly has uses. I'm really hyped for its combo potential, but it does seem like kind of just a cool fair card as well. We also got our 5-color commander with the sets mechanic from Duskmourn in Marina Vendrell. So Wooburg, 1 mana of each color for a 3/5 human warlock. It's a legendary creature. It says when it enters, reveal the top 7 cards of your library, put all enchantment cards from among them into your hand, the rest on the bottom in a random order, and then you can tap it to lock or unlock a door of target room you control. Activate only as a sorcery. So obviously, this is like a 5-color room commander, which is pretty cute, but it's also just a fine enchantress card. I know it's a little unintuitive to lock a room. You're probably thinking, why would I ever want to do that? I want to be unlocking my rooms. But some of the rooms trigger when they become unlocked. So this is a way that you can like reuse the effect essentially, where you unlock a room, get its ability, and then you lock it again, and then you pay more mana to unlock it and get its ability a second time. So Marina Vendrell, one thing I will complain about with this card is it doesn't really work very well with Marina Vendrell's Grimoire. It's kind of funny that Marina Vendrell cares about enchantments, and then the Grimoire is an artifact that cares about life gain. Maybe there's some lore purposes behind that, but it is pretty funny to me that you would kind of never want to play Marina Vendrell's Grimoire in a Marina Vendrell deck. So I don't know about that flavor fail. As far as standard is concerned, this is a super cool card for rooms. If you want to take the win the game with promising stairs challenge, this is just one of the perfect cards. You play all the rooms in the deck, this digs through deck to find your rooms. It can even help speed up the unlocking of rooms. Having a card that taps to like turn on Lecture Hall or some of these other really expensive rooms seems incredibly powerful if you can get it going. So there is a cost here. You gotta be 5 colors, you gotta play a lot of rooms, you gotta play a lot of enchantments, but it seems like a really fun deck to build at least. It also seems good in just a generic enchantment deck. Like maybe we ignore the room text on this card and you just play 5-color enchantress and you play this and hopefully you're drawing like 3 or 4 or 5 cards with it and you're playing your Annie Joins up and Calyxes and ossifications, so that could be another possibility. It's also super cute with Leyline of Mutation. When we saw Leyline of Mutation, it was kind of like, I don't really like this card, but now that we have Marina Vendrell, having a way to have perfect mana that's also an enchantment actually kind of fits the theme. So this is a way to make sure the mana works in a Marina Vendrell deck. In Commander, I think this is the new best 5-color enchantment commander. Right now, the default is Goshen Tie of Life's Origins, which is really good, but it's also like pushing you to be specifically a shrine deck. So if you want to be a 5-color enchantment deck that isn't a shrine deck, I think Marina Vendrell is the new best option. Plus, you can build a room deck in Commander as well. There's some other rooms in the Commander precons, so you get some options that don't even exist in Standard. So Marina Vendrell, in Standard, I would be surprised if it was like a top tier card, but I think you can build a super cool deck around it. In Commander, I think it's going to be pretty popular. It's 5 colors. People love their 5-color commanders. It lets you do something cool with the new ability from Duskmourn with the room thing. Plus, you can just play it as a generic art enchantment commander as well. I should also say, I know on a Commander Clash podcast a little while ago, I was pretty critical of 5-color good stuff commanders, like Kenrith, for example, is a card that I really don't like. I don't like 5-color commanders that don't push you in a specific direction. Marina Vendrell, I actually like this, though, because I feel like it does push you in a direction. This isn't a card that just says, play all the best cards in 5 colors. It's pretty specific. It wants you to play a lot of enchantments, and even beyond that, to fully power it up, it wants you to play a lot of rooms. So these are the kind of 5-color commanders that I actually do like. Commanders that are 5-color, but are like, play some specific cards to make me good. Not like Kenrith is just like, play whatever the best cards are across colors, and I'm going to be perfectly fine. We also got a card that I gotta shout. This is a Commander precon card. Normally, I just let Tomer cover those over on the Commander channel, and he actually did a video yesterday covering this entire precon, so go over to the Commander channel and check that out. But I had to bring up Ancient Cellarspawn, even though, as a Commander precon card, not legal in Standard, not legal Pioneer, not legal in Modern, probably not coming to Magic Arena, just because I feel like this card could could be incredibly busted in Legacy. So I'm curious, if you're a Legacy player, weigh in the comments. I haven't played much Legacy recently. I'm curious what you think of this card. But it's a 3-mana 3/3 enchantment creature horror. It says each spell you cast that's a demon, horror, or nightmare costs 1 less to cast. That doesn't really matter. The big deal here is whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell was less than the spell's mana value, target opponent loses life equal to the difference. So obviously in Commander, this card does really cool things with like Carrick or Bolas's Citadel, any of these like cost reduction, cast a lot of spell effects, but you can see that in Tomer's video. What I'm hyped about is how well this works with a lot of popular Legacy cards. This is a card that on the battlefield, in Legacy, you cast a Force of Will to counter something, your opponent takes 5, because Force of Will, 5 mana value, but you cast it for 0 mana. Force of Negation, Daze, these are all among the top 10 most played cards in Legacy. And then if you really want to go deep on this, like Leyline Binding for 1 mana hits you for 5, Solitude for free hits you for 5, Scion of Draco for 2 mana hits you for 10. So it seems like you can build a deck around this card with these cards, or if you want to go deep, Soul Spike effects, where you just play this, and within a turn or two, it just pretty much kills your opponent. And the reason I'm kind of hyped about it is it works with a lot of the cards that you're playing anyway in Legacy. It's not like some card that you gotta play these janky, horrible cards to make work. Like I said, Force of Will, Force of Negation, Daze, Dismember, those are all in the top 10 most played cards in the format. And then cards like Leyline Binding, Solitude are also very playable as well. So if you're a Legacy player, what do you think? Is Ancient Cellarspawn actually a player in Legacy? Is it gonna be worth it to try to kill your opponents with your Force of Wills and with your Leyline Bindings? Or is it just too slow at 3 mana? I saw some people saying you could even like turn 1 win almost with this card. Like you could Dark Ritual it out and get it on the battlefield, and then like Soul Spike and then Force of Will your own Soul Spike or something. I think you run out of cards in hand a little too fast, but with the best draws, this card could kill really, really quickly. So Legacy players, let me know what you think. Is this just Commander bait, or can it actually do something in the format? As far as lower rarity cards, a few deserving of a shout out. Enter the Enigma, 1 mana sorcery, target creature can't be blocked this turn, draw a card. Worth noting just because it's a 1 mana cantrip, and we have Prowess in Standard, we got Slickshot Show Off in Standard, we got Vesuvian Duplimancy in Standard, so there are reasons that you just want 1 mana cantrips that target your creatures. So in a deck that's trying to like trigger Prowess or whatever, could actually see some play. We also got Jump Scare, which seems like a pretty reasonable pump spell. 1 mana instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+2, gains flying, and becomes a horror creature in addition to its other types. So this is essentially a upgraded Mighty Leap or an Arrestor Zeal that doesn't need addendum to give flying. So I feel like this is the new best version of this white pump spell that gives flying. How much that actually matters, we'll have to wait and see. If there's like a Heartfire hero, Cacophony Scamp deck that goes into white, maybe with Leyline of Resonance, this could certainly be a part of it. We also got Live or Die, a 5 mana instant where you get to choose one, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, or destroy target creature. And this card is notable just because it is instant speed reanimation. Like, sure, maybe there's some fringe situations where you cast it as a bad removal spell, but 5 mana is kind of the going rate for reanimation with Cruelty of Gix and Coiling Rebirth, so you're paying the right amount of mana for this effect, and then being an instant, and also not putting the creature into play tapped, which we see with some reanimation that can be at instant speed, is actually a pretty big deal. Like, you can cast this once your opponent attacks, reanimate something, get that as a blocker, eat your opponent's thing in combat. So I don't think it's like busted or anything, but I think it's close enough to keep in mind if you're playing a reanimation deck, especially if you can get some value out of it being an instant. We also got Sporogenic Infection, which I don't know if this card's actually good, but it is pretty neat. So it's a 2 mana aura. You enchant a creature. When it enters, target player sacks a creature other than the enchanted creature, and then when the enchanted creature is dealt damage, it gets destroyed. So Sporogenic Infection, it's essentially like an edict. It's a sorcery speed edict. You get the upside that you get a little control over it. You can put the enchantment itself on your opponent's weakest creature, try to make them sack their best creature. Plus, you might be able to get the creature that it enchants dead in the future with, I don't know, combat or like some burn spell or something. Is it as good as Sheoldred's Edict? Probably not, although there might be an upside if you're playing an Eerie deck where you just care about enchantments entering the battlefield, that this might actually be good enough to play if this is a removal spell that's also triggering your Victor or your Optimistic Scavenger or whatever. We also got 2 new ways to deal with artifacts and enchantments, both 2 mana, both sorcery speed, but both with some upside. So Cathartic Parting, 2 mana sorcery, target the owner of target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, shuffles it into their library, and you can shuffle up to 4 cards from your graveyard into your library. And then Exorcist, 2 mana sorcery, exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power of 4 or greater. So Cathartic Parting, it's essentially like the Glamour, except you get the downside of it being sorcery speed, but you get the upside of the Devious Cover-Up, shuffle 4 cards from your graveyard back into your library effect. I don't think this card is like super pushed, but it could have some uses. We do have both artifacts and enchantments that we need to deal with in this standard, so this could serve a purpose there. As far as Exorcist, I think this is the better of the two. So it's a revoke existence, but it also is kind of like Destroy Evil, where you have the option of getting rid of a high power creature. A little bit different. Destroy Evil's toughness 4 greater, this is power 4 greater, but still, it should be roughly the same. And I think this card could actually be really nice in standard, because compared to Destroy Evil, it basically does everything that Destroy Evil does, but it also kills artifacts like Ouroboros Forge, so it seems like a really nice catch-all. Even at sorcery speed, having this 1 card in your sideboard that gets rid of Caretaker's Talent and Innkeeper's Talent, and gets rid of Ouroboros Forge, and gets rid of like Sheoldred or other big creatures, seems like a nice little catch-all effect. We also got Brood Spinner, a little spidery 2-drop, a Golgari 2/3 with reach. When it enters, you surveil 2, and then you can pay 6, sack it, create a number of 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard. So Brood Spinner's worth mentioning, I guess for Delirium, but the main thing I was thinking is this could work in the Insidious Root stack. So it surveils to fill the graveyard, which is what Insidious Roots wants anyway. It's a 2 mana creature, so it's going to work with Tyvar, plus it works well with Tyvar's haste in the late game, where if things go wrong and you don't win with roots, you can always like get your Brood Splinter, sack it to make a bunch of tokens. Those tokens gonna have haste thanks to Tyvar, and tap for mana thanks to Insidious Roots, and you keep your combo going. So I could see Brood Spinner being good enough to see play in the Roots deck in specific. Of course, we also got a bunch of Draft Jeff stuff that you can check out over at MTGPreviews.com. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Duskmourn spoilers for today. So what do you think? How busted is Kona? Am I off base on that card? Because to me, that card reads like just like an incredibly broken effect. But I'm curious what y'all think. What about that Black Commander card? Is that good enough for Legacy? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy it. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more Duskmourn spoilers. So until then, have an amazing day, and I will talk to you soon. Looking for even more magic? Well, check out yesterday's spoiler video here, or maybe the Against the Odds, where we taught some Marina Zoomers about owls and creature locks.